We are back with the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast. We're going to be going in this segment from 163 down to 188, your rotation numbers using Sportsmemo odds page. We got Kyle Hunter, new addition to Sportsmemo.com. He knows college football really well, also does the NFL and NBA, which, keep in mind, starting next week. So without further ado, Kyle, welcome to the Sportsmemo podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Drew. Glad to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on, kind of popping your cherry here with the Sports Memo Every Game on the Board podcast, but excited to have you as part of sportsmemo.com. Do you want to just take a couple seconds here and tell people a little bit about yourself, what they're getting with Kyle Hunter, and maybe a little bit about your background?
Sure, yeah. I've been professionally doing this for 10 years now. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but time goes fast when you're having a good time. I love sports. I've always loved sports, and sports and betting are a good combination for me. I have finance background, investments, and went into the sports betting area. And college football has been a strength of mine, especially totals. When I do these shows, I'll try to let you know when I have opinions on totals sometimes, because totals is certainly my strength. I'm good at looking at tempo and efficiencies and things like that. So 58% all time on college football totals over a large sample size. I think that's something to, I don't really like to prop myself up, but that's certainly something I'm proud of. And college football in general, I feel like it's a strength of mine. I watch a lot of it, certainly study the numbers a lot. I feel like I'm a well-rounded handicapper, but I'm glad to be on here talking college football because, to be honest, it and college basketball are my two favorites.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree with you with those two being my two favorites and the two I've had the most success with. And it's interesting, we come from pretty similar backgrounds, finance backgrounds, you more from the mutual fund side of it. And up there in Ohio, so been around college football, Buckeyes fan, family's Buckeyes fan, correct?
Oh, yeah. Diehard Buckeyes fans here.
All right, well, good stuff. And 58% college football totals, pretty much his lifetime, almost 10 years now. And you should be getting about 7 to 10 plays if you choose Kyle Hunter. And, hey, we'll just get right after it, man. Let's start off 163, 164, Louisiana Tech at Texas San Antonio here. We got La Tech laying doubles on the road here, Kyle. 11, 44.5 the total. How would you look to bet this one?
Yeah, this UTSA team is really, really bad on offense. If you look at their performance from last week, it's pretty depressing. They played a Rice team last week that's terrible in defense. Rice is 123rd in the nation in yards per play allowed. UTSA couldn't do anything on them. 178 yards, 2.97 yards per play. 4 turnovers from Rice is the only reason they won that game 20-3. La Tech coming off a blowout upset loss to UAB. I think this is a better spot for La Tech. I have to say I don't love laying this many points with the total this low because that's not correlated, certainly. I think La Tech is the team with a much higher upside. And if I had to play this one, I would take La Tech minus the points just because I don't know if UTSA can score much at all here. When you've got a low total like this, you try to start trying to figure out how many points the underdog has to score. I don't think UTSA can score very many points here. They haven't proven on offense that they can do much of anything. La Tech has had a pretty high upside. They played LSU well earlier this year. They beat North Texas, one of the favorites here on this side of Conference USA. I think La Tech certainly has the bigger upside. And like I said, I don't love laying this many points, but I couldn't take UTSA in the spot.
Kyle, we got some action next up. 165, 166, Western Michigan at Bowling Green. Looks like 14.5 at Chris. We're seeing 15s at Heritage, 70 the total. So looks like a up and down affair here in the MAC. Some action of years past, supposedly, in Bowling Green. But how would you look to bet WMU versus BG here?
Yeah, I feel like the MAC is a pretty good conference for me. I'm right around the area where the MAC is, and follow these teams pretty closely. I have to say that, Bowling Green's a really hard team to back right now. Their defense is so bad. They're giving up 6.65 yards per carry, really bad on the front seven. The secondary is not much better. Interesting note for this game, too. Western Michigan is plus 10 in sack margin so far this year. Bowling Green is minus 12 in sack margin. So Bowling Green, offensive line, a big problem. Western Michigan's played the tougher schedule. I know Western Michigan's going to move the ball in this one. They're 24th in yards per play this season in the country. I don't like laying this many points on the road. And it might sound like a broken record here, but I certainly don't love laying points on the road. I have an overlean in this game, even at 70. Some wind in the area, so I would definitely check the forecast. You certainly don't want to be having an over 70 in a windy game. So as that game gets closer, be sure to check out the forecast to make sure we're not getting 15 miles per hour winds or anything like that.
Heading to the SEC West, in fact, probably the two bottom teams in the SEC West with Mississippi and Arkansas. I believe this game is in Little Rock. I'm not sure on that, but looks like Ole Miss laying 7, I guess you could say, on the highway, although I believe it's more of a neutral site game, about 3 hours in between each college, but 67 the total. Any opinion on betting Ole Miss versus Arkansas, Kyle?
Yeah, my lean on this game was certainly the over, and as I looked at the forecast, I decided I'd pass on this one. It looks like rain and some wind in the area. The combination of rain and wind is the single best thing you can have if you're an under better. So that's going to keep me off the over in this game. Ole Miss's offense has been tremendous so far this year. This is a team that, if you haven't watched them too much, they take a lot of shots downfield, and it's worked really well for them. They have a good quarterback, some really good receivers. They have 35 plays this year of 30 yards or more on offense. That's first in the country. Second in the country is 26 plays of 30 yards or more. So lots of big plays from Ole Miss. Arkansas has been a little more competitive in the last few games, though. They looked really bad, like against North Texas. They've played stronger since then. They played a close one against Texas A&M, who I think is a good team. And then they scored quite a few points on Bama's defense, which I think you have to respect that. Like I said, my lean would have been to the over. I don't like it with the weather too much. I think I would lean Arkansas plus the points if I was going to take the side here. I don't think that Ole Miss team that has as bad of a defense as they do, I'd want to lay points here.
We got a big one in the Big Ten up in your world here, Kyle. I was on with Clay Travis early this morning talking this game, and this has been bought up from 6.5 to 8.5 early this morning. Now we're seeing 9.5s and 10s, so money really pouring in here on Michigan. And I'll tell you, Kyle, Wisconsin letting up over 500 yards last week to Nebraska. That doesn't bode well. And Wisconsin, their defense, only 4 returning starters from last year, plus a bunch of injuries this year going up against Shea Patterson, who almost 70% completion percentage with only 3 picks. Wisconsin 1-4 ATS, even though they're showing 4-1 straight up. I see this as a big blue or pass. What's your opinion on betting this big Big Ten matchup?
Yeah, you look at Wisconsin and Michigan, the first thing I think is under. Both very slow-paced teams. Wisconsin 125th in pace of play, Michigan 126th. So you're going to get both teams wanting to run the football a lot. Moving clock. The problem here is Wisconsin's defense, like you said, has been a really big problem this year. Wisconsin is 100th in the nation in yards per play allowed so far this year. I mean, you get a Wisconsin team 100th out of 130 teams. It doesn't make much sense, to be honest. Wisconsin on defense has been top 5, top 10 in the country almost every year. Even with replacing guys, I certainly didn't think they'd be this bad on defense. I think they'll probably improve on defense the rest of the season. But, this Michigan defense is really good. They're first in the nation in yards per play allowed by a wide margin. If I had to play something in this game, I think I'd take the under. If Wisconsin can stop the run, that's the biggest key in this game. Can Wisconsin stop Michigan from running the football here? Because I think both teams are going to want to run a lot. I don't blame you for the Michigan lean here, because, again, I'm not sure how many points Wisconsin can score. I don't trust their quarterback play. I know that they can run the ball pretty well, but this Michigan defense is the real deal. So slight lean to Michigan and the under here.
All right, staying in the Big Ten, we got 171-172 Minnesota at Ohio State. Looks like what the Golden Gophers catching 29.5, 59.5. We got your Buckeyes. One, do you bet the Buckeyes because they're your favorite team? And 2, what's your opinion on betting this game?
Yeah. I mean, I bet on the Buckeyes and against the Buckeyes. I'm a Buckeyes fan, but I'm not afraid to take the other side if I think it's going to make me money. I mean, that's more important to me than always rooting for my team ATS. That's for sure. Ohio State's excellent on offense. Haskins in the passing game, really good. Ohio State's defense is way down from what they've been in past years, though. I think their big issue is the secondary. They've had such a good secondary the last few years. A lot of those guys are in the NFL now, though. And they thought maybe a lot of people thought they could just replace them. They've got great talent. It's not really worked out. Their safety play has been really bad this year. They've taken some really bad angles at the ball, and they've turned into big plays for the other team. I think the question mark here, though, is can Minnesota take advantage of Ohio State's weakness in the secondary? Indiana was able to do that last week. Minnesota, I don't think they're the team that's able to take advantage of a weak pass defense. Minnesota tries to be really physical in the trenches. Ohio State is bigger and stronger than Minnesota. I don't think this game sets up too good for Minnesota, although I wouldn't want to lay the points here either. I don't think this will be a very close game. This would be a game I would pass on.
Okay, let's head to a military academy here. We got 173, 174 Temple at Navy. Looks like Temple laying 7. There's a 6.5 at Jazz out there using Sportsmemo odds. 56 the total, Kyle.
Yeah, this is a game where Temple and Navy, you look at it and you think Navy's played so poorly so far this year. It's hard to take Navy, but at the same time, Navy has lost one game at home in the last 4 seasons on their home field. This is a spot where I can't lay 7 points with Temple. It's either taking the 7 with Navy or passing. I think this Navy coaching staff is very good, and I would expect them to turn it around at least some. I know they played a really poor game last week against Air Force. I think that this team has a bounce back in them. I don't know if it's this week, but I think that Navy is a little bit undervalued at this point. Temple does match up well with them as far as a strong defensive front to stop the option, but in a game that I don't think will be very high scoring, I would certainly lean to the under. I wouldn't lay the 7 points here. It would either be Navy or nothing for me.
And guys, you're listening to Kyle, obviously knows his college football. We do have a coupon code here for the podcast of Kyle25, and that gets you 25% off any service Kyle is offering here at sportsmemo.com. So that's a 3-day, 7-day, 30-day, full season, all for 25% off, whatever you want. Kyle25 at checkout will get you that discount. Again, 58% totals lifetime. And knows his college football. And with those all access, 3, 7, 30 days, you would get college football, NFL, and NBA starting next week. Kyle does do the NBA. Let's move down here to West Virginia, Iowa State in the Big 12. We got West Virginia making the trip out to Ames, Iowa, laying 6.5 on the highway, 56 the total, Kyle.
Yeah, this total has moved down. I'm a little surprised the total's been pushed down. I know that has to be a sharp move. The public wouldn't want to be taking an under in a game like this, but the thing I'm most interested here is the side. West Virginia laying 6.5 points. I think this one's probably going to touch 7. The public likes West Virginia. I would take Iowa State here if it gets to 7. Matt Campbell, an underrated coach. I wonder how he keeps flying under the radar so much. Campbell's teams are 25-12. ATS is an underdog all time. Iowa State's Montgomery, questionable, certainly a key guy in the backfield, so you want to check the injury report on him. To me, this is an Iowa State team that has proven they can beat good teams wherever they are, but Iowa State has a really good home field advantage. I think everybody knows that, but West Virginia hasn't really been tested that much so far this year. I think West Virginia is certainly a good team. I don't know how good West Virginia's defense is. Their passing attack's obviously really good. I think Iowa State's one of those teams, though, that plays everybody tough. And if this number gets high enough, I wouldn't be afraid to take Iowa State in this one.
And what you're thinking on just reading the market, what I'm seeing open at 4.5 up to 6.5 at a lot of shops. Why do you think money's coming in on West Virginia, Kyle?
Yeah, I think the injury question mark for Iowa State is at least part of it. I think that also there are a decent amount of sharp people who like West Virginia. So maybe this is a contrarian play for me. Not saying I'll necessarily take Iowa State here, but that would certainly be my strong lean, is to go against the crowd.
All right, let's head to the Conference USA, 177, 178, Southern Miss, North Texas. Looks like 55.5 the total. This one bet up a little bit. The Mean Green opened 8.5 up to 9.5 at some shops. How would you look to bet Southern Miss, North Texas here?
Yeah, I noticed this one on my odds screen here earlier today, the total getting bet down. Checked out the weather here, and you can see why. 65 degrees, 15 miles per hour wind, 80% rain. So definitely good for the under. Makes a lot of sense to me to take the under in that spot. I will say neither of these teams have really played a tough schedule so far this year. Southern Miss has played a really weak schedule. They're 22nd in the nation in yards per play allowed, but I'm skeptical of whether they're going to be able to keep that going. North Texas' Mason Fine, certainly the best player in this game. He's a really good quarterback. I know most people don't know too much about him, but if you ever get a chance to catch a North Texas game, he's certainly a really good quarterback, fun to watch. Can North Texas, can they run the ball? I think that's the question mark here. They lost their star running back from last year. Their running game hasn't been that good so far this year. If they're too one-dimensional, I think Southern Miss has a chance here. My lean would be taking the points with the dog, but it's not a strong lean.
Kyle, this is an interesting one as far as line movement goes. We'll head to the Big Ten, 179-180, Nebraska, Northwestern. Totals-wise, been bought up, 56 up to 59.5 now. But side-wise, huge move here, 5-point move. Open 9, now down to 4.5. Obviously, people wanting to bet Nebraska, but you're a financial guy. You don't want to be catching a fallen knife here. Is that what people are trying to do here, as far as timing Nebraska and buying it, or do you think that's actually the right side in this Big Ten matchup?
Yeah, it's interesting. My power ratings made this one Northwestern minus 5.5. So initially, I saw the line and I thought, oh, we'll see what happens with this line. And now I feel like it's an overreaction, what's happening at this point. I think everybody wants to catch that first win. Nebraska has been close here. Scott Frost, certainly a popular coach, and I think that makes sense. He's going to do a good job at Nebraska. I have a season win total under for Nebraska. That one's certainly looking good. It's one of those spots where a coach like Scott Frost, Chip Kelly, they're going to do a really good job, but it's the first year in the system. Nebraska's -6 in turnover margin this year, too. And I think that over time, you usually find that bettors are taking sharper bettors are usually trying to play the fact that they won't keep being that bad when it comes to turn. And I think that's, certainly a fair point. But, at this point, I certainly wouldn't be interested in taking Nebraska plus the points. And I will say, I agree with this totals move going up. I think that, the tempo that both of these teams play at, Northwestern's also throwing it around. Over 58% of their offensive plays are passing plays this year. That's top 5 nationally. So I certainly lean to the over here in this one.
Staying in the Big Ten, we got Iowa, Indiana. Looks like the Hawkeyes laying 5.5 on the highway, with 52.5 being the prevailing total. How would you look to bet Iowa versus the Hoosiers here?
I think this might be the hardest game of the list of games that you gave me here. My power ratings are right on the number here. Iowa thumped Minnesota last week. Indiana played Ohio State close for most of the game in Columbus. Iowa's not running the football very well this year, but they have a really good quarterback. I think Stanley's underrated. Iowa's plus 13 in sack margin this year. They're also 7th in yards per play allowed. This Iowa defense, it always surprised me, Drew. Every single year I look at how much they lost from the year before, and they lost a lot from last year. They lost Josie Jewell, a star linebacker. They just reload on defense, and they're top 10 again. This Iowa defense has really impressed me so far this year. I think Iowa tries to slow this game down. Indiana looks to play up-tempo. I don't think there's any big values in this game, though.
Guys, remember the coupon code Kyle25 for 25% off of any Kyle service, 3-day, 7-day, 30-day service that will get you college football, NFL, and NBA. Kyle, my favorite matchup of the weekend, 183-184 UCF Memphis. Big AAC tilt here. We got UCF. Some people regard them as the defending national champions, laying 4.5 on the road. 81 now the total. Going to be a lot of points here in Memphis, but how would you look to bet this big matchup in the Liberty Bowl?
Yeah, I agree with the totals move from 77, 78 up to 81. I have to say, though, it's certainly hard to take over 81. I mean, everything has to go right for over 81 to hit. I wouldn't want to take the under, and I can't imagine too many people want to take the under in this one either. But, everybody sees the big plays by UCF. But as I was looking at this team, I think a huge key for this UCF offense is avoiding negative plays. They've only had 13 or only allowed 13 tackles for a loss all season. UCF is also converting on 59% of third down conversions. Certainly that's kind of correlated because you're not getting big negative plays, so you're not behind the chains. But that's a great combination on offense. I do like a situational spot here from Memphis. Memphis beaten twice by UCF last year, lost in double overtime against UCF in the title game. Memphis is first in the nation in yards per carry so far this year, and certainly UCF's defensive weakness is stopping the run. I think this is a close game, a really high total that, like I said, if I had to play the total, I'd take the over, but I don't have to, and I don't think I will. I think this one stays close. My lean here would be Memphis plus the points.
All right, going against Central Florida, 18-game winning streak, and you're going to try to buck that here, or you think it just comes down to value with 4.5?
Yeah, it's more of a I think this is going to be a really close game, so I'll take the points with a kind of a contrarian lean there. The public is looks like a little over 80% of the bets are on UCF, so a contrarian lean here on the dog.
All right, we got 185, 186, Tennessee at Auburn. 46.5 the total. Looks like 14.5 Auburn laying at home. Man, laying doubles, laying 2 touchdowns with the way this Auburn offense has looked is scary. Early start here, 11 a.m. kick. I know personally that does affect the home atmosphere there on the plains. How would you look to bet Tennessee-Auburn?
Yeah, I think Tennessee is a little bit of a public underdog at this point. I don't like taking those public underdogs very often. Having said that, like you said, it's hard to lay too many points with Auburn. I've had the under in several of their games this year. That's worked out well. I would lean to the under in this game as well. My concern is that this Auburn team has a lot more talent than does Tennessee, and Auburn's offense is probably a little better than they've shown so far this year. I know their offensive line is a big problem, but skill position wise, they're a lot better than Tennessee. It's certainly possible that Auburn could take out their frustration in this game. I don't know that I'd want to bet it, but it won't surprise me at all if Auburn wins this game by 28 points, by 35 points. At the same time, do you really want to trust Auburn that much? Tennessee is certainly a team to try to get right against this year. I think Auburn has frustration, and they could take it out on them. I don't think Tennessee is going to score much at all. This Auburn defensive front's been really strong all season. I think they'll be in the backfield a lot here. So I would say my strongest lean in this game would be the under.
So under of 46.5. And yeah, you kind of touched on this. I mean, when people talk about Auburn struggling on offense, they have. There's no doubt. Gus Malzahn's offense, a timing offense, it really needs a lot of athleticism from the quarterback position. I think, I've read some clippings. They're going to look for Stidham to run a little bit more. And people got to remember, 3 of their opponents are Washington, LSU, Mississippi State. What do all 3 of those teams have? A good defensive front. Right. So some of that is a little bit, I think, the defenses they have played, Kyle. And you don't think Tennessee is to that caliber of defensive front?
Oh, not even close. I think this is a much weaker defensive front. I think this will tell us a lot about Auburn, too. If they can't move the ball and score enough against Tennessee, it shows pretty poorly for the rest of the season.
Yeah. All right, guys, coupon code, we got one game left, is Kyle25, 25% off of any service Kyle's offering on sportsmemo.com. Last game here, heading to the Big 12, Kyle, 187, 188. Baylor at Texas, 60.5 the total, with the Longhorns laying 14 at home in Austin.
Yeah, this has been a significant line move. Minus 17 down to minus 14. That's almost exactly where my power ratings number is 13.5. So I agree with the move. I think this is clearly a sharp move. You wouldn't see this big of a move early in the week coming from the public. I think this is a good spot for Baylor based on Texas coming off that upset win over Oklahoma and their huge rivalry game. And can we really trust Texas yet? I think everybody wants to say right away that Texas is back. They're a great team again. They're still only 81st in the nation in yards per play. Yards per play margin, they're giving up 5.47 and they're getting 5.52. So they're almost exactly even on yards per play for the season. That's 73rd best in the nation. I'm not totally sure that Texas has broken out yet. I need some consistency out of them. Certainly, I don't think Baylor's that great of a team, but Matt Rule's a good underdog coach. His teams are 24-13 ATS as an underdog. If I'd be catching a little bit more, I would like Baylor here. At 14, slight lean to Baylor. I just think that, people are a little bit too quick to rush to say that Texas is back. We've seen them pull upsets before. Drew, you know this. I mean, Tom Herman's the great underdog coach. Everybody talks about the trend for Tom Herman as an underdog. And, I mean, I had Texas last weekend, and that one worked out well. But I don't trust Texas laying a lot of points. I think that they need to show me more.
All right, good stuff, Kyle. Guys, coupon code Kyle25, 25% off, and we will be right back with Rob Vino to finish out College Football Every Game on the Board podcast.